Okay na, Lor? Okay na, Lor?
Okay naman ko.
Sige, sige. Mag-start ata?
Start na?
Start na? So, good morning, everyone. So, Sir Jeff, we are Group 3, and today we will be reporting about brakes, the types of brakes, and how they perform. So, in my report, I'm going to talk about the overview, the principle, and the brief history of brakes. So, it's over 100 years since the first brakes made its first debut. Made of wood and controlled by lever, these brakes were used to slow down carriages or cars with steel-rimmed wheels. That was a long time ago, though, and with cars back then reaching maximum speeds of 30 to 35 kilometers per hour, these brakes were good. As technology advanced and cars kept on getting faster, new brakes were also developed alongside to keep up with the speed of the car and the increasing demand for cars on road. This led to multiple different types of brakes, from a simple drum brake to highly advanced automatic brakes. So before we get into the types of brakes and their working, we need to understand the principle behind the brakes. So, muna siyang principle sa brake, muna siyang iyang essence sa brake. This will be a common point in every braking system. The principle used by every brake is friction. Opposing any force is something friction does, but we increase it using brakes. Friction converts kinetic energy into heat energy, thus effectively bringing the car to a stop. Every time of brake will use friction to stop a car, one way or another. Brakes introduce a stationary element and put it in contact with a moving one, thus causing friction. So ang brakes ang makapahunong sa ligid or sa vehicle kay through friction between the brake pads or sa panang technology gamit ato sa wheels or sa disc, sa rotors. So mo na siya. Friction may makapa stop sa vehicle. So, a brief history to the evolution of brakes. The brake is what makes it possible for humans to control a motor vehicle for a safer riding condition. For over a century, braking systems have evolved into a more complex device to adapt to different road conditions. They are a key part of the amazing technology that makes up the automobile. Many forms of brakes have been developed over time as the technology of cars has advanced. Here we will break down the history and different types of brake technology. So in the early 1800s, the first mechanisms to slow a vehicle's momentum and prevent motion were tested. Today, over 100 years later, the braking system has evolved into a complex device designed to adapt to different road conditions. From the early drum brakes to modern day discs, brake system evolution has improved safety and reduced the risk of car crashes across the globe. With so many forms of brakes that have existed over the century, it is hard to pinpoint the inventor of the original brake system. However, those who designed these systems had a common goal to make it possible for humans to control a motor vehicle. With the goal of creating safer conditions, innovators over the years have brought new technologies to the braking system, improving upon this original idea. So, the development of the braking system, the evolution of brakes has been impressive and has included many new technologies throughout the years. In all new developments to the brake system, the number one priority is to improve auto safety and efficiency. Since the earliest automobiles, several methods of braking have been used. As the history of brakes progressed, each new system was built using the concept used to design its predecessor. Brake system evolution began in the 19th century and continues today. The types of braking systems that have been used over the years include wooden block brakes, mechanical drum brakes, expanding internal shoe brakes, hydraulic brakes, disc brakes, and anti-lock brakes. So sa wooden lock brakes, muna siya ang earliest brake system applied. So kani siya apply the physical principles used to design brakes today. However, the system consisted of only of wooden blocks and a single lever used by the driver to apply the brake. Nakuha ba ni Miller? Wait sa. So, wooden block brakes na ta. So, muna siya, ang wooden block brakes. This form was used on vehicles with steel-rimmed wheels, including horse-drawn vehicles and steam-driven automobiles. So, kaning wooden block brakes, kay muna siya ang murag first nga brake system gi-develop niya. Ang forma niya, kay muna siya, kung mag-bike bitaw mo, niya, murag inyo ran manual o brake inyo ang chinilas niya na ang iyang yan na yung operation. Yung tail man yung gamitin pang brake mo, yan na ang function ng wooden block brake. Maray lever na i-pull niya mo katong na yung lever at mo hold to siya sa ligid mo to siya makapahunang sa ligid. So sunod nga progression sa brake is mechanical drum brakes. So considered to be the foundation of the modern braking system, the mechanical drum brake was developed in 1902 by French manufacturer Louis Renault, but had been invented earlier by Gottlieb Daimler. Daimler had theorized that anchoring a cable-wrapped drum to the vehicle's chassis could be thought to use momentum, thus creating the first concept of the drum brake. So, kaning mechanical drum brakes kay, ang gigamit ani kay kanang cables gi-attach sa drums adto sa lever gyapon. Nya mao to siya i-pull nya ang katong cable mao to siya mo exert og force ato sa drum brake sa sulod ana kanay mo na siya mo kuan sa drum mo expand sa drum para mahunong tong ligid. So kaning mechanical drum brakes daghang nakit-an nga issue ani nga dali ra siya maguba, dali ra siya maputol. So in 1901, Wilhelm Maybach designed the first Mercedes with a simple mechanical drum brake, wherein steel cables were wrapped around the drums of the rear wheels and is operated by a hand lever. But it was Louis Renault who was credited with inventing the drum brake that has become the standard for cars. So kaning drum brake, mo na siya ang andod karon nagyapon siya aron, di ba? Mo na siya yung common nga type sa brake sa sakyanan sa automobile. So kani siya nga design kan gamit kaayo. So gamit kayo siya nga development for sa braking system. So next na progression sa brake development kay expanding internal shoe brakes. Before the expanding internal shoe brake was invented, all brake systems had been fastened outside of the vehicle. Those systems were vulnerable to the elements, collecting dust in the water, and being affected by fluctuations in temperature, all of which made the brake less effective. The internal shoe brake was the first to be fixed inside the vehicle's frame, an important innovation in the history of braking systems. So, mo siya, mo po ni siya ang gigamit na concept ron nga ang mga brakes kinana sa sulod para dili na siya dali ma-wear, dili na siya dali maguba. So, kani siya more on sa hintay sa drum brake sa sulod naman sa sulod sa rim naman siya mo hindi para sa mga early brakes katong itong wooden block brakes nga sa gawas siya sa gawas ang brake bitaw so dali ra siya ma-expose so dali ra maguba. Next is hydraulic brakes. In 1918, the concept of a four-wheeled brake system using hydraulics was first proposed by Malcolm Lockheed. The system used fluids to transfer force to the brake shoe when a pedal was pressed. This braking system was adopted in nearly every vehicle by the late 1920s. Hydraulic brakes, muna siya ang paggamit sa pressure fluid para mo tod sa piston or something sa brake pads, muna siya ang gamitin. So, kaning mga types of brakes na further discuss sa ubang reporter sa upcoming reporters. So, ang next, disc brakes. So, pagkaabot sa disc brakes in the mid-20th century na siya. So, disc brake was invented long before becoming popular. William Lanchester patented the disc brake in 1902. The system was not popular until the auto industry began to boom in the mid-20th century. The rise of disc brakes as a popular option is attributed to the increasing weight and speed capabilities of vehicles, which caused hydraulic brakes to become less efficient in distributing heat. The first system to use disc brakes integrated both disc and hydraulic functions and was introduced in the Chrysler Imperial. Chrysler Imperial is a very known top-of-the-line Chrysler vehicle. So, siya gamit sa mga high-end na mga vehicle sa una. nga sa pag-una. So, handod karon mao gyapon ni siyang gamit dito. So, next is evolution. So, brake anti-lock brakes. So, the anti-lock brake system, better known as ABS, was created to assist previous braking systems to prevent the brakes from locking up while in use. ABS works by sensing a lock is about to occur and igniting a system of hydraulic valves to reduce the pressure of a brake on a single wheel. The system revolutionized the way brakes function and is useful in providing more control for the modern driver. Brakes are one of the so kani siya ABS to prevent locking, na siya technology na nga hibawaan para dili bitaw mo lock ang brake para dili mo slip or unsa. So ma-discuss po na sa mga upcoming reporters. So brakes are one of the most critical components of a car. So just the press of a pedal or pulling of a lever and the car comes to a halt. How do brakes work though? How many types are there? So i-discuss pa nato na as we go deeper into the world of brakes. So to the next reporter, she will talk about how brakes perform and what are its components. So Leah Duterte, and they'll give the report to you.
Hello, good morning everyone. Good morning, Sir Jeff. So, mabalik sa tagamay sa brakes sa about. So, brakes are an energy absorbing mechanism that converts vehicle movement into heat while stopping the rotation of the wheels. All braking systems are designed to reduce the speed and stop a moving vehicle and to keep it from moving if the vehicle is stationary. So the basic function of the brake system is in a vehicle is to convert kinetic energy into heat energy. This is done by the brake system converting momentum of the vehicle into heat energy at the brakes through the moving brake rotor or drum and a frictional material, better known as brake pads or shoes. So, murag dili na nakayo na ako i-discuss no. So, kay murag gitakol naman po na ni Simon ganiha ang about sa brakes ug unsa na siya. So, next is ang types of brakes. So, we have two types of brakes, which is ang drum brakes o ang disc brakes. So, di gyapon ko mo dig down deeper diha kay i-explain na later pod ni Mr. Doldolea ug ni Mrs. L. So, next, ani na ta sa vehicles brake system components. So first component is the master cylinder. So the master cylinder is activated by depressing the brake pedal. So the pedal pushes a piston through this cylinder, forcing brake fluid through brake lines to slave cylinders at each wheel, which in turn drive the pistons that force friction material against the wheel hubs, stopping the wheel. So, kaning master cylinder, ano siya? Naani siya kanang mura bitaw, kanang ballpen bitaw siya nga type nga kanang click bitaw nga type nga ballpen. Na siya sa ilawom nga, which is if i-press nimo tong pedal, like for example kadong clicker ang kanang clicker nga ballpen bitaw, if i-press nimo na siya, ang kadong spring dito, move na siya, which would kanang mag-make way siya sa agyanan sa brake fluid. Connected siya sa iyahang brake lines. Connected siya sa brake lines na mag-make way siya para agyanan sa brake fluid. So, important component niya siya sa brake system kay mag-convert siya sa force into hydraulic pressure. So next is the brake booster. So brake booster are also known as the vacuum servo. So it is a part of the power braking system. So a brake booster uses engine vacuum or a vacuum pump to amplify the foot pressure that you place on the brake pedal. This makes it easier to slow down the vehicle. So kaning brake booster is located siya sa rear sa rear part niya, mo siya disc man god niya. Sa rear part niya naa kay makita ato nga vacuum connection kanang mong gitawag pud siya og vacuum servo kay naa siya makita nga vacuum connection. So kani siya sa nang mao siyang increase the force of the brake pedal exerts as the brake pedal exerts on the brake master cylinder. So next is wait. Next is ang brake pedal. So the brake pedal is located on the floor to the left of the accelerator. When pressed, it applies the brakes, causing the vehicle to slow down or to stop. So you must use your right foot with your heel on the ground to exert force on the pedal to cause the brakes to engage. So dili naman siguro dapat iko ano gaso dapat ang brake pedal kay murag kita tanan murag kahibaw man dapat asa ang brake pedal sa sakyanan siguro, or I don't know sa uban. So important siya kay sila ang mo-amplified sa force nga sila ang mo-amplified sa force nga gi-generate sa driver. So works ni sila or friendships ni sila sa master cylinder o brake booster kay murag silang tulo ang mag-work together para ma-apply nimo ang brake bitaw. So next is ang wheel speed sensor or the ABS. So ang wheel speed sensor is a sensor used to measure the steering of the car wheels. They detect the rotational wheel speed of the vehicles using a non-conducting measurement principle. Commonly used wheel speed sensors are magnetoelectric wheel speed sensors and Hall effect wheel speed sensors. So kani siya kanang mura ni siya CCTV. Mura siya CCTV nga nag-face siya sa tone ring or the tone wheel. Kanin. If magtuyok ang tone wheel, kanang tone wheel na siya sa bitaw sa wheel hub. So if magtuyok ang tone wheel, kani siya mag-generate ni siya AC electrical current nga mag-generate siya AC it's generate AC electrical current when tone rings are rotating. So the faster the tone ring spins, the higher the frequency of the signal. So next is the ABS module. So the ABS module is a microprocessor that runs diagnostic checks of a vehicle's anti-lock braking system and processes information from wheel speed sensors and the hydraulic brake system to determine when to release braking pressure at the wheel that's about to lock up and start skidding. So giingon man siguro na ganiha po din Simon about ang anti-lock chuchu. So kani siya, mao ni siya ang brain of the entire anti-lock braking system. Siya ang mag-control sa brake pressure and located din siya sa left side sa vehicle sa frame rail. So it releases the brake pressure so that the tire can regain the grip and then reapplies. Next is brake lines. So, ang brake lines is a system of rigid steel tubing that runs from the master cylinder and along the vehicle's chassis to each of the four wheels brake assemblies. It transfers brake fluid between the master cylinder and wheels. This is the hydraulic fluid allows braking to be easy. So kaning brake lines is naani siya kanang ilawom to sa sakyan kanang taas kanang bitaw makita nimo nga tubo-tubo nga daghan kayo taag-as like that. So they kanang kani sila dapat ni siya nimo thoroughly check bitaw kay or regular dapat siya naka-regular inspection kay they must transmit manggod the pressure nga gi-generate sa driver to the wheel brakes nga why delay or dapat dili siya ma-miss kay if ever man good if ang brake lines na siya murag damage or na buslot ba siya kay pwede mo siya mag-create og moist nga maka-cause nga maka-delay sa kanang sa braking system or in worst case scenario kay mao hinoy kanang maka-miss bitaw or dili mo gana ang brake nga maka-cause hinuon og accident. So yes, you must dapat ninyo naka-regular inspect ang inyong mga brake lines. So next, it's brake fluid reservoir. So these are the canisters that connect to the brake master cylinder. Connect the brake master cylinder. So the brake fluid reservoir stores fluid and protects it so that your hydraulic braking system can work properly. So kani siya kani mara siya kanang galon, mini galon nga naa dito sa sakyanan. So usually made na siya sa plastic or polymer plastic. Then naka-separate na siya sa master cylinder. Pero works gihapon na silang nila master cylinder, brake booster ug brake pedal. So kani siya kaning brake fluid reservoir na ani siya fluid level sensor nga mo alert bitaw kanang yellow na siya more siya juice nga color or iced tea like that. Og mo gamay na siya kaning fluid level sensor mo alert nga gamay na imong brake is the hose. So a brake hose is made of rubber that carries brake fluid from a brake line fixed to the car's body the rest of the way to the brake caliper on the wheel. Its flexibility is what allows the wheel to move with the suspension. So, kaning brake hose is unsay kalainan niya sa brake lines kay nagtan-aw mo pud nimo sa sakyanan kay murag may pud sila forma pud. Kani siyang brake hose dili ni siya pero sa brake lines nga kadto bitong tag-as kayo. Mo ni siya kadong kani siya naka-connect lang ni siya sa each sa mga wheels. So upat ni siya kabuok. So sa sakyanan sa ligid sa sakyanan naka-connect ni siya sa from the brake lines to the wheel. So okay. So next is the combination valve. So the combination valve has the job of the three separate devices. So kanina siya located siya sa left side of the vehicle below sa master cylinder. So kaning first is the metering valve. So the metering valve is in charge of delaying the application of the front brakes just long enough to overcome the rear brake springs. So kanang ma-help ni sila sa pag-delay bitaw sa application of the front brakes. Next is the proportioning valve. So ang proportioning valve is it reduces the pressure to the rear brakes. These valves achieve balanced braking by reducing fluid flow and pressure to the rear brakes during hard and sudden stops. So this keeps the rear brakes from locking up when kanang kalit bitaw ka hunong or naay mga panic stops like that. Mao na siya para magkuan imong brakes maka-prevent nga mag-lock. Then next is ang pressure differential switch. So this is a device that alerts you if you have a leak in one of your brake circuits. kani siya naka-install ni siya sa front side of the valve. So kani ang uban nga combination valve kay dili at lagi dili siya pressure differential switch ang gamit. Ang uban is nagamit sila pressure sensing switch nga ang pressure nga ma-sense ra niya is kanang going to the front brakes ra, while kaning pressure differential switch is ang ma-sense niya nga pressure is both ay ang tanan nga kuan the front and the rear brakes. So next is ang wheel hub. So wheel hub are a cast or machined metal part found between the vehicle suspension and the wheel. Hubs connect the axle to the wheel and allow the wheel to spin smoothly with the help of a bearing. Kani siya, mauna siya kanang bitong naasa wheel bitaw kanang metal siya nga dako. Like marag disc pud siya. So unsay kanang relate niya sa braking system. Diri sa wheel hub, diri kasagaran diri ang mounting point sa brake disc or sa brake drum. So when the brakes are applied, they actually slow down the hub dili ang wheel. So fun fact na dili ang wheel ang wheel ang gi-slow down sa brakes kundi ang hub. So next is ang parking brake handle, or also known as the handbrake or emergency brake. It is a mechanism used to keep the vehicle securely motionless when parked. So kani siya kanang when naka-up tatan if may makaibaw ka nga naka-activate siya or yung kuan imong parking brake is dapat siya naka-up. So nganong gitawag po siya emergency brake. So kay if ever magodili mo gana ang imuhang brake kadong brake pedals or mag-malfunction siya, you can use it. Pero dapat siya naka-press ang button kana bitong nay button kanang nasa tumoy niya. Dapat siya naka-press kay para mas makontrol nimo ang pressure nga imong i-apply para para makontrol nimo ang pressure nga imong i-apply sa brakes aron dili siya ma-stuck kay if imuha manggong if dili man gud nimo i-press kay na siya ay dako siya chance nga ma-stuck kanang bitong dahil na bitaw siya naog or i-up or down yan na nga mauhin na makaingon sa ma-out of control at sa imuhang kuan pag-drive. So next is the last part is the brake drum. So together with the brake shoe, a brake drum forms a friction pair which decelerates the rotation of the wheel. The brake drum also has the job of absorbing and discharging the heat generated during braking. So, mao na to kani siya naka-connect naka-connect pa siya sa wheel hub. So, next is ipakita lang siguro tong video kay para mas makasakita mo asa jud siya dapit bitaw nga part o makasabot mo unsa jud how the brake works. Play. Sige. So we have here the rotor and the drum. So the rotor attached to the front wheel and the drum to the rear wheel rotates down with it when the brakes are not applied. So So, kita man no, inag-press sa brakes. So, the force generated by the brake pedal is boosted using the vacuum form. So, the pressurized fluid reaches inside the caliper and the wheel cylinder. So when the pressurized fluid reaches inside the caliper, forcing the brake pads inside it to move, ano ko? So, maura siguro no? Ang nakita ba ninyo? Sorry, wala siya audio pero naman siya kuan po text para mas o gibasta lang ninyo. So next reporter is Mr. Acedo and Miss Tubac. They will explain more about the hydraulic system. Thank you.
Naka-mic na eh. Kapit mo na Good morning, classmates. Good morning, sir. 𝗔𝘂𝘁cie𝗺𝗶𝗃𝗃𝗲. Good morning. Hydraulic braking system. What is braking? Braking is the action of stopping the running vehicle. Samot nag-ambugo, no? Kita na. The action of braking is done by using a brake. Ano naman ito nan? In the brake, the kinetic energy due to the motion of vehicle is dissipated in the form of heat energy due to friction between moving parts between wheel drum and brake shoe. Wait sa akin, ko bitaw. Lolo. Wait ko ba? Lolo. Wait lang. Hello. Pwede na. Hello. Pwede na.
Okay na, Jevanny.
Pwede naman tayo.
Okay na.
Okay na dahil. Sige. Function of brake. There are two main functions of brakes. To slow down or stop the vehicle in the shortest possible time at the time of need. To control the speed of the vehicle at turns and also driving down a slope. Classification of brakes. On the basis of method of application, loading log. On the basis of method of application of foot brake, hand brake. Mechanical brakes. Mechanical brakes are assemblies consisting of mechanical elements for slowing or stopping of shafts in equipment drives. They use levers or linkage to transmit force from one point to another. Hydraulic brakes is an arrangement of braking mechanism which uses brake fluid typically containing glycol ethers or butylene glycol to transfer pressure from controlling mechanism to the braking mechanism. Air brakes, or more formally a compressed air brake system, is a type of friction brake for vehicles in which compressed air pressing on a piston is used to apply the pressure the brake should need to stop the vehicle. Vacuum brakes is a braking system employed in the trends introduced in the mid-1860s. A variant, the automatic vacuum brake system became almost universal in British train equipment and in the countries influenced by British. And electric brakes, often referred to just electric brake or electric trailer brake, is a brake controlled by an electric current and can be seen on medium-duty trailers like caravans, RVs, and consumer-grade car trailers. Next. On the basis of methods of application of braking compact, internally expanding brakes, externally contracting brakes. What is hydraulic braking system? This is the system which uses hydraulic fluid to build up pressure for braking action. Muna siya ang history sa braking hydraulic. Si Fred, saan na po ba? Sa Duesenberg originated hydraulic brakes in 1914. Then, 1918, si Malcolm Lohead developed the full hydraulic braking system. Pabigyan. Next. Principle of working. Hydraulic brakes works on the principle of Pascal's law. Pascal's law states that any force applied to a confined fluid is transmitted uniformly in all directions throughout the fluid regardless of the shape of containers. Next. Next ba? Types of hydraulic brake. How many kanya? Expanding drum type hydraulic brake nga this type hydraulic brakes. Next. Pila ko na sa trip.
Okay, ako na.
Sige.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, sir. Ako ang fourth reporter. My name is Eleanore Tubac and mo continue na ta, sir. So, components of this type hydraulic brake system. Ang ginihang nga gidiscuss ni Jevanny kay drum type hydraulic braking system. Pero ang fluid kay moagi sa master cylinder, padung sa pipes, padung sa wheel cylinder, nga sud sa wheel drum, nga mao mo push sa mga braking shoes against sa wheel drum para mahunong sa wheel. Pareha sa gidiscuss ko nilang Leah giniha. Kanina pong this type nga hydraulic braking system, lahin na po ang mga components ani. Na dinhi ang brake rotor, kanang disc nga magtuyok, kanya ang brake caliper nga mo'y maghawid sa brake pad o piston o ang brake pad nga naato nga sa caliper nga mo'y mohunong sa rotor and brake. Next. Ay, sorry kaning paan. Okay. So, mo ni ang drum brake. So, mo ni ang mga components sa drum brake na ay brake cylinder, ang pistons, drum, cable, ang adjuster mechanism, brake shoes, o emergency brake mechanism. Next, palihog. So, master cylinder. It is the main part of the entire assembly. It acts as a hydraulic actuator with a piston cylinder arrangement. It is responsible for converting mechanical force into hydraulic force. Fluid is compressed and pressurized into the master cylinder as a brake pedal that is transmitted to the brake assembly via hydraulic lines. Next. So na po ilaing type nga master cylinder, morning tandem master cylinder. Tandem master cylinder is the latest development in hydraulic braking system. It reduces the risk of brake failing. There are two different sections in the tandem master cylinder for pressurized kuan. So mo to ang kuan kuan ang forma sa tandem master cylinder. Okay, next palihog. Next na component kay ang braking plate. The braking plate is the base for other components. The wheel cylinder, brake shoe, and parking brake mechanism are mounted on it. It should be strong and may resistant. So ani dapita ang nakabutang tong mga parts sa drum. Kuan mo ni ang murag mag-support sa tibok nga mechanism. So brake drum. The brake drum is rotated with the wheel and axle. Brake shoes are pressed against the brake drum as the brake is applied. It is heat conductive. So mo ni ang murag kuanan bitaw ang mo i-press sa mga brake shoes within kani ang hunongon sa drum braking system, hydraulic braking system para mahunong ang wheel. Para sa gidiscuss nilang Leah gini. Next kay ang wheel cylinder. There is a separate wheel cylinder for each wheel. Its function is to exert force on the brake shoe. It consists of two pistons with one on each side. So mo ni ang forma sa wheel cylinder, mo ning nasod sa kanang drum. Ang function niya kay inig mo kuan na ang fluid, mo pressurize ang fluid within. Ang mga pistons sa each side niya mo mutod sa mga brake shoes against the sa wheel drum mo nang makapahunong sa wheel. Next palihog. Okay, next. Brake shoe. One yung gimension na giniha. There are 2 brake shoes for each wheel. Friction material is at outer lining of brake shoe. It should be heat and wear resistant. So na friction material sa outer lining sa brake shoe kay mo na makapahunong sa wheel drum. Nya duha na kabuok kay ang ang wheel cylinder nga naa tunga anang duha ka brake shoe mo na motud sa duha ka buok kay para mahunong sa tibok nga wheel drum duha na siya ka buok. Okay, next. So, ang return spring. The return spring pulls the brake shoe back as the brake pedal is released. So, kung ma-release ng brake pedal mo nang mo pull sa brake shoe balik sa yung former nga state. Next. Working of drum type hydraulic brake. So, the brake pedal is pressed. So, kanina tayo nag-press sa brake pedal. Na po braking fluid na ma-pressurize inside sa master cylinder. So, kanina pressurized fluid kaya mo-travel through sa hose pipes. So, ang pistons sa wheel cylinder kanang nastunga bitaw kanang connected sa hose, nastunga sa wheel. Mo na mo expand na siya. Nga mga piston sa each side ana mo na motud sa mga brake shoes. Anya, tungod kay na may frictional nga material sa outer nga line bitaw sa brake shoes, mo na mohunong sa drum nga magtuyok. Nga mohunong pod ang wheel ana at the same time. Mo na ang mechanism sa drum type hydraulic brake. So, anita sa components na po sa this type hydraulic system. So, tulo na siya ka components na ay brake rotor, brake caliper, o brake pad. So, ang brake rotor, mo ni ang katong gatuyok. It is the component against which the brake pad is applied. The brake rotor is made of gray iron or special alloy. It rotates with the wheel. Holes are drilled on brake rotor for heat dissipation. Mo ni ang kanang kuan gatuyok sa ginihang nga kuan bitaw GIF. Anya, next nga component nato kay ang brake caliper. It is the assembly which houses the brake pad and piston. It is made from plastic, aluminum, or chrome-plated steel. There are two types of brake caliper, ang fixed or floating caliper. A fixed caliper has pistons on both sides and they simultaneously squeeze in from either side. The caliper is solidly bolted to the structure of the vehicle. A floating caliper has a piston pushing a disc on one side of the disc rotor and a pad fixed on the caliper body on the other side. So, kaning caliper, braking caliper, kung yung magkanang hawid sa mga kuan sa braking mechanism, nga mo hunong sa rotor. Anya nato yung 2 types. Ang fixed kay duha na kabuok ka pistons ang kuan ang mag-tube bitaw sa brake pads. Duha na ka pistons ang motor sa brake pads para mahunong ang motor. Mo na ang fixed caliper. Nya fixed ang iyahang caliper nga solidly bolted to the structure of the vehicle. While ang floating caliper isa ra nakabuok ka piston nga mo push sa disc on one side. Anya pikas nga brake pad kay kuan fixed ra pod. Muna ang brake pad ang sapat kiniha. A brake pad is a frictional component of disc brake. Generally, there are 2 brake pads per caliper in disc brakes, one for each side bitaw sa rotor. It is placed in front of the caliper piston. When is sewed sa caliper. Muna ang kuha ng kanang mechanism sa this type braking, hydraulic braking system. Inig mo kuha muna ang kaning example. Mo ni ang floating nga example kanang isa ra ka piston bitaw sa kilid o kanang kulay yellow, isa ra ka piston ang motod, while ang pikas kay mo kuan pod fix ra pod ang brake pad sa pikas. So inig mo motod na ng kanang piston, motod sa brake pad, mo nang ang rotor mo nang braking mechanism. Kaya rotor kay magdungan man sa kuan sa wheel ug tuyok. So kanang inighunong sa rotor, mahunong po ang wheel. Okay, next. Working of this type hydraulic brake. Wait. Okay. Brake pedal is pressed. The brake pedal is pressed. Braking fluid is pressurized in the master cylinder. Parehas sila sa giniha. Pressurized fluid travels through the hose pipes. The pressurized fluid presses the brake pad against the brake rotor. Due to the friction between the brake pad and the brake rotor, braking action is performed. So moto, ang kuan ay nagtudi mo sa pedal na pressurized fluid nga mukuan mo ma-pressurize ang fluid sa master cylinder niya mo travel ang pressurized fluid sa pipes anya tungod ana matud pud ang mga pistons naga nya mo pud motud sa braking ni mohunong sa rotor nya na friction mo pud mo nang brake siya. Tingnan. Valves used in hydraulic braking system. Ano man gi-discuss nilang Leah din. Proportioning valve or equalizer valve. The proportioning valve typically connects the master cylinder to the rest of the system. Then is the independent cylinder. This valve is necessary for optimizing front to rear bias, also referred to as brake balance. So ang next na valve. Okay. Pressure differential valve. Pressure differential valve monitors any pressure difference between the two separate hydraulic brake circuits. The valve can be located in the master cylinder or in the combination valve. Parehas sa discuss nila giniha, mo ni ang mo-alert if na ay difference sa pressure between sa two separate hydraulic brake circuits. So ang next type, combination valve. It is a single unit that performs multiple functions. Okay, combination valve. Combination valve are often just called proportioning valve, pero in reality, they do more. Excuse me. They are usually installed on vehicles with front disc and rear drum brake. For mania. Sunod kay mag-story about sa braking fluid. A brake fluid is a typical type of fluid which used in hydraulic braking systems. Brake fluids are incompressible. Incompressible meaning dili siya makompress, so constant na jud ang density. Bisag unsaan nimo og pressurize mo apply na tong Pascal nga law yung dimension ni Jevanny giniha. Nga ang pressure kuno nga gi-apply sa incompressible nga fluid remains equal in all directions. Kung kaning brake fluid ang mao gamiton sa hydraulic braking system para mas paspas ang transfer sa pressure gikan sa pedal padung sa brake pad or brake shoe. Glycol, ether, castor oil, mineral oil are examples of braking fluid. Characteristics of brake fluid. Na-require apat kubot nga gibutang diri: boiling point, viscosity, corrosion resistance, combustibility. The main requirements for brake fluids are high operation temperature. So dapat taas ang boiling point nya, good low temperature and viscosity temperature properties. Na siya physical nga chemical stability, protection of metals from corrosion, maoning corrosion resistance nga dili makaapekto dapat sa mga metals nga kakontain niya. Inactive na siya dapat nga inactivity with respect to mechanical rubber articles and lubricating effect. So mo niya mga requirements for brake fluids. Advantages sa hydraulic braking systems: equal braking action on all wheels, equal ang braking action niya. Increased braking force. So kay dili man parehas siya sa mechanical braking system nga daghan pang mga parts ni brake. So na siya dayon ng kuan so motong increase ang braking force niya. Low wear rate of brake linings. Kay fluid naman ang gigamit, so dili na kayo makuan bitaw ta mabalakas sa mga individual parts nga mukalit ka kuan. Increased mechanical advantage. Kay dito naman ang force gikan sa pedal padung sa brake kay moagi naman ang force sa atong fluid, so mas dali na ta maka-brake sa kay ma-transfer man dayon nato ang pressure gikan sa pedal padung sa braking mechanism. Better stopping power than the other brakes. Napadiyobang advantages such as it is small in size and lightweight, high stiffness, high precision, and fast response, large driving force, suitable for heavy load, direct driving, wide speed control range, and various speed control modes, self-lubrication, self-cooling, and long life. Yeah. Next kaya mga disadvantages. Whole braking system fails due to leakage of fluid from brake lines. Not to mention if hydraulic fluids leak in hot areas, it may catch fire. If hydraulic lines burst, they may cause serious injuries. So then, complex construction, more maintenance is required compared to other braking systems. Some additional disadvantages in using a hydraulic system are poor resistance to work fluid pollution, sensitive to temperature changes, difficult manufacturing, and high cost kay complex maniyahang construction. Yeah, it is not suitable for long distance transmission and requires hydraulic energy. Mga mga disadvantages. Next kay magstorya ta sa application of hydraulic braking systems. The hydraulic braking system is used in cars, jeeps, mini trucks, or in buses. Drum-type hydraulic brakes, they are used in some low-speed four-wheeled vehicles. Yeah, this type hydraulic brakes, they are used in almost all cars like Maruti, Suzuki, Swift, Hyundai, mga. Yeah, na also in bikes like yeah, na mga. Kaya na. Yeah, essentially, ang kanang difference bitaw sa kuan sa drum type hydraulic braking system og sa disc type. Ang drum type internal siya anya. Ang drum type kay internal siya anya ang katuna ay wheel cylinder niya kay mo expand from within sa drum sa wheel drum anya mo na makapahunong sa wheel. Anya ang katuna ay disc type ang rotor kay gatuyok nya mo na hunungon dapat ato sa pikas ato sa wheel kanang drum type kay ang drum mo hunungon. Ani sa disc type ang rotor hunungon ang disc bali na anya contract mo kuan siya kaysa mo expand katunay drum kay mo expand man to from within kani siya ang katong disc type kay mo na mo contract siya from the external part niya na correct to.
Hello, ako na? Hello, hello.
I'll start now.
Okay. So, good morning guys. Good morning, sir. So, my topic is all about drum brake. So, murag discuss naman sa mga previous reporters ang overview sa drum brake. So, na may idea sa drum brake, no? Then, so, hello. Sorry, no, So, like I said, murag na-discuss na sa mga previous reporters ang drum brake. So, na may idea, no? Sa drum brake. So, what is the drum brake? A drum brake is a brake that uses friction caused by a set of shoes or pads that press outward against a rotating cylinder-shaped part called a brake drum. The term drum brake usually means a brake in which shoes press on the inner surface of the drum. They are usually located on the rear wheels because of the need of a parking brake. So makita ni siya kanunay sa likod sa sakyanan. Then ang drum brake, ang mechanism man ay sa sulod siya mo brake. Diba sa disc brake kay sa gawas man murag ipiton siya, sa drum brake sa sulod siya murag kanang i-push. So next. So brief history of drum brake. So murag natakol to majority visitors. The modern automobile drum brake was used in car by 19th. The principle was only later patented in 1902 by Louis Renault. Used within asbestos lining. So asbestos dahil guys is heat resistant fibrous silicate material. Mo na siya ang nasa lining sa shoes mo kibalik sa kung sa bike pa mo ni ang guma kunuhay nga mo ipit mo siya heat resistant ta siya. Moving asbestos lining for the drum brake lining. So, as no alternative dissipate heat like the asbestos lining, though Maybach had used a less sophisticated drum brake, in the first drum brakes, levers and rods or cables operated the shoes mechanically. So, mo yung na-discuss ni Simon ganina no, sa history. From mid-1930s, oil pressure is a small wheel cylinder and pistons operated the brakes. Kanin nagasugod ang mga hydraulics. So, next. So what are the main components of drum brake? So first, backing plate and back plate assembly provides a solid base for other components in the drum attached to the axle sleeve. Muna siya ang kuan jud. So base sa jud sa kuan. Murag ibali og sa computer pa mo ni ang murag kunuhay nga motherboard. Ano mga components ani gi-attach. So next, brake drum. Muna siya ang katong ikuan to bolted to the wheel hub and spins with the wheel, often made of cast iron and is resistant to heat and wear. This is what you see when you look at an assembled drum brake and is the component upon which braking force is applied to slow or to stop the car. So kabantay mo sa sulod ani nga sa cylinder, ani sa sulod, ani sa i-push ang katong duha ka shoe. Ani dapit ang makuha na mahitabo ang braking sa drum brake. So next Lord. Wheel cylinder. So na-discuss nila ni no. Contains two pistons, one at each end of the cylinder to reach the brake shoes. The cylinder adds pressure to the pistons which pushes the brake shoes towards the drum, slowing or stopping the car. One cylinder is needed per wheel. So muna ang nana dapit ang itod ang brake shoe. Ay kuan ana mo agi ang katong mga oil nga mo pressurize sa kuan pistons. So next. So brake shoe pushes into the drum to create the friction necessary to slow or stop the car. Secure to the backing but able to slide when pressure from the wheel cylinder is applied. It has a lining attached to it, made up of organic or metallic compounds. The line, mamotong gingon ginano katong asbestos kanang nasa lining. The lining is what actually comes in contact with the drum and wears away with use. Each brake contains two shoes. The primary shoe is closer to the front of the vehicle while the secondary shoe is closer to the rear. Depending on the type and brand, the brake shoes may be interchangeable. Makuha na siya guys, malisdan o kintay ka ng repairs o na maguba, makuha siya makuhaan. Pwede siya makuha or mabutyan lain. So next, ibalik sa Lord. So kabantay mo na yung duha ka brake shoe, mura siya kanang kimpit. Ang nasa ubusan ni kaning na duha ka circle bitaw. Ang tawag na mo ni angkor. Angkor tawag na mo ni mo gunit sa duha. So next. So automatic adjuster keeps the brake shoes at a consistent distance away from the drum, even as the lining wears away. Ang automatic adjuster mo na ang kanang pagpa-maintain sa kuan distance kay aron ang brake shoe di na mo paduol sa kuan drum kay ug moduol na mo kuan mo pilit kanunay mo kang kailangan na siya distance na kuan jud specific distance. So next is return spring pulls the brake shoes back away from the drum when the driver lets off the brake pedal. Diba ika-brake man no kay matuod man ning duha ka shoe. So ikabuhi nimo sa brake pedal, ang trabaho sa return spring magpabalik sa shoe sa yang position sa kinunhan. So next, working principle sa drum brake. Murag na nakuan ko din nila na discuss ang overview ani. So kwanta review ta when the driver steps on the brake pedal, the power is amplified by the brake booster. So mo na servo system and changed into hydraulic pressure and oil pressure by the master cylinder. The pressure reaches the brakes on the wheel tubing filled with brake oil. The delivered pressure pushes the pistons on the brakes of the four wheels. The pistons press the brake linings, which are friction materials, against the inside surface of the brake drums, which rotate with the wheels. The linings are pressed on the rotating drums, which in turn decelerate the wheels, thereby slowing down and stopping the vehicle. So makabantay mo sa picture, mo siya ang process. Mapadako ang picture, Lord. Tama siya ang process mo, nag-i-discuss sila ganiha. Gikan sa brake pedal padung sa brake sa ligid. So mag-show ko video nga unsa jud ang kurma niya sa 3D without. So dai video din. Sama siya step sa brake pedal udong sa masay forma. May sulod sa drum sa brake drum na piston mutod sa duha ka shoe. So mo niya mga parts, wheel cylinder cap, wheel cylinder piston na siya mga specific parts niya pero ang main components ug katong na-discuss na naho kanina. Then ay sa pagka-video i-explain ang sa forma niya. Okay, sounds Lord.
Uy, mudong daday?
Baw nila, okay baw. Uy, bukan sa tuwa.
First, we will take a look in more detail.
Ibalik na.
Brake drums are generally made of cast iron, which conducts heat well and is slow to wear. The drum rotates on the axle and wheels, providing the friction surface when the brakes are applied. Next, we have the backplate assembly. The backplate assembly contains all the components required to operate the drum brake. Let's explore each of these components in turn. The backplate remains stationary and provides a fixed base for the other components to attach. Next, we have the brake shoes. Brake shoes consist of a steel frame fitted with friction material or brake lining. This material is bonded or riveted to the outer face of the shoe frame. There is a wheel cylinder. The wheel cylinder is connected to the hydraulic system and contains pistons which are forced outwards by hydraulic pressure when the brake pedal is pressed. Shoe retaining springs pull the brake shoe down onto the backplate, keeping it in position. A tensioning spring is fitted to the shoes. When the brake pedal is released, hydraulic pressure is reduced, allowing the tensioning spring to withdraw the wheel cylinder pistons and pull the brake shoes away from the drum. This allows the wheel to rotate freely once more. Drum brakes use a self-adjusting mechanism. The appearance created as the friction material on the brake shoe wears, reducing the return movement of the shoe. This effectively brings the brake shoes closer to the drum and maintains a consistent pedal feel and braking response. Finally, we have the handbrake mechanism. The handbrake cable enters the drum through the backplate and connects to the brake shoe lever arm. Electronic and hydraulic systems are found in handbrakes, but in our example, cables are used with the rear brakes. When the handbrake is pulled upwards, the cable is tensioned, forcing the brake shoes out against the brake drum. The ratchet in the handbrake maintains this tension until the handbrake is released. And that's the basics of a drum brake system.
So mo to siya no. So next is the types of drum brakes. Na di siya mga types day pod lahi. So katong example ganina mo to ang mo to siya leading and trailing shoe type drum brake. Ito nga itong example. So mo na ang imong wheel is mag-rotate clockwise. Ang katong show nga nasa right position mo to siya ang leading, then atong nasa kilid mo to siya ang trailing. If mo trailing, so it is a the show that moves in the direction of it is being pressed drum. There's show trailing, they can at least press the same direction of as the rotation so that it helps to press the shoes against the drum with greater pressure for stronger braking force. They call the servo effect or self-boosting effect, which realizes the power braking forces of drum brakes. Structurally, it has a wheel cylinder housing a piston in which hydraulic pressure is generated to push two shoes against the drum's inner surface. The two shoes functions in a way they both become either the trailing shoe or leading shoe depending on whether the vehicle is traveling forward or backward. Drum brakes generated consistent braking force whether the vehicle travels forward or backward. This is because drum brakes generated the same braking force in either direction. Generally, this type is used for rear brakes of passenger cars. So next type of drum brakes. So mo niya siya ang twin leading shoe type drum brakes. Kabantay mo na duha ka bukwan, duha ka wheel cylinder nasa babaw sa ubos. So mo siya gitawag na twin leading shoe type. This type of drum brake has two wheel cylinders and two leading shoes. Okay. Pakuan mo siya. So, ang duha ka shoe, leading siya tanan. Walay ka ng trailing. Okay. Murag kibali, murag paaway sa usag-usa kay duha ka wheel cylinder. Each wheel cylinder presses on one shoe so that both shoes act as leading ones when the vehicle moves forward, providing superior braking force. Each of the pistons housed in the wheel cylinders displays in one direction. So when the wheel in reverse, both shoes act as a trailing ones. This type is used mainly for the front brakes to mid-size trucks. Sagaran sa mga truck ni siya gamiton kay para kusog ang brake. The dual twin leading shoe type has pistons that displace in both directions, making it possible for both shoes to act as leading ones. Regardless of direction of travel, this type is mainly used for the rear brakes, small to mid-size trucks. So next type. So last is the dual servo type drum brake. The dual servo type features a structure where two brake shoes called the primary shoe and the secondary shoe. So parehas siya sa leading and trailing. Link via an adjuster. So katong sa kinunhan, ang galing ato ang anchor sa di ba sa obos kay kadid mo duha ka circle. Gagunit siya so ito yung anchor. So ani nga type ang gagunit nila ang adjuster. Strong pressure from the servo effect, self-boosting effects of the primary shoe is transmitted along secondary shoe, thus generated a very large braking force. This type is mainly used for parking brakes on passenger cars, the center brakes on trucks, and brakes on forklifts. So, what are the advantages of drum brake system? So first, simple design and parts. Second, easy and cheaper to manufacture. So 3, low maintenance cost, and 4, comparatively longer life. So dugay na gud nga drum fan since pila sa tunga year i-discuss ni Simon comparative longer life. So next is the Disadvantages of drum brake system. Para sa gingon ni Simon kaning drum brake, daghan ni siya issue no kanunay magubaan. So first is low braking force compared to this. Two is brakes fades when applied for a prolonged time. Third is the brake shoe lining made of asbestos is harmful to humans. So four, when wet, the braking grip reduces considerably. So fifth, non-asbestos linings catch moisture, causing drum brakes to grab suddenly. So next, so for safety, the brake drum is one of the most important vehicle systems in terms of safety. It's relatively low wear and has a long service life. A specialist workshop should be consulted immediately if the deteriorate, deterioration. Oy, no. Ibalik sa if the deterioration in the braking action of the drum. So, di ka magpaalala o kuan o kay knowledge sa kanan lala o nado kang specialist in the drums are usually to be replaced by qualified personnel. Translation between advance kuning ano sa maintenance or at least once a month yan na ba. So ang you
Wow, good morning, guys. Oh, pwede ay, so sorry, guys.
Time's up.
So, meron report ko more detailed explanation about sa this rate. And then, na naman ta from the past reporters, kay ba na natay background sa subject naman dito siya. This break. So, recap na no, kay para mahinduman siya kayo. So, Mupress ang driver sa brake pedal, a piston compresses the brake fluid inside the master cylinder ngan makit-an under sa vehicle's hood near the engine. So kani mo create ni siya a lot of hydraulic pressure which generates a much bigger force than that of the small effort of pressing down on the pedal. So the pressure is then transferred via the brake fluid through the brake lines, then through brake hoses that connect the lines with brake assemblies at convert that hydraulic pressure back to mechanical force. So brake friction material is pushed against the brake disc or drum, slowing or stopping your vehicle. So ani sa case nato sa brake disc na mag-focus. Next slide, please. So basically, these brakes use a piston or pistons so to squeeze friction materials or pads on both sides of a rotating disc or rotor. So the rotor is attached to and stops the wheel. These brakes are found on most vehicles today. These brakes are used on front wheels of late model vehicles and usahay sa rear wheels sa increasing number of automobiles. These brakes were adopted primarily because they can supply greater stopping power than the drum brake. Still kanina advantage na this brake when it comes to stopping power. So these brakes especially well suited for use as front brakes, which must provide 60 to 80% of the vehicle's total stopping power. Next slide, please. So at this a disc brake is relatively simple compared with a drum brake. So, the major disc brake friction assembly components include the following. Makita ninyo sa picture na caliper assembly, brake pads, and rotor. Mo ni ang pinaka-major components niya. So, kita ninyo with the exception of the rotor, ang caliper dyan ang pinakadako sa disc brake friction assembly. Well, except sa rotor. So the caliper is an assembly mounted to the vehicle with a bracket so it frames the rotor. It uses hydraulic pressure to keep the vehicle vertical for treating the brake pad in contact with the rotor. So it's and functions like a C-clamp ka. Di ba ang smura na siya mo? So next slide now, please. So ang caliper assembly contains brake pads. So kaning metal plates bonded with material that provides stopping friction, and then one or two pistons to push the brake pads against the rotor when you brake. A bleeder screw para allow for servicing the brakes and replacing the fluid. A rubber piston seal that prevents brake fluid leakage and retracts the piston when the brakes are released, and a dust boot to keep contaminants out of the cylinder, and anti-rattle clips that keep the brake pad stable and reduce vibration. So next slide please. So balik kay para tipid tas oras. So next slide please. So the rotor provides the friction surfaces for the brake pads to rub against. So the rotor, the largest and heaviest part of a disc brake, is usually made of cast iron kay ang kaning metal na siya excellent friction and wear properties. It's attached to the wheel hub and turns with the wheel. It's the surface the brake pads contact. So when you step on the brakes, ang pressurized brake fluid mo push against the pistons inside the caliper, which force the brake pads against the rotor. So as the brake pads press against both sides of the disc, the friction stops the wheel's rotation. So more siya, kibalik-balik na dyan siya ang piston may maka-press due to the pressurized brake fluid. And then one ay maka-cause of friction and then mo stop ang wheel. So rotors can either be solid or vented. So vented ones have more surface area and can more easily dissipate heat since they have radial cooling passages cast between the friction surfaces. While solid rotors are most often used siya sa mga likod sa vehicles nga equipped with four-wheel disc brakes. Next slide please. So natay two types of disc brakes named after the type of brake caliper nga giuse, natay floating and then fixed. So a floating caliper so-called glide ban, ay uban nga i-differ nila duol na siya og in terms of so a floater, most common tire brake pad is forced against the while at the same time the caliper body moves further. This action forces the outer brake pad against the rotor. So the biggest advantage of floating and sliding calipers are barato na siya, simple construction, and compact iyang size. So because they have fewer pieces, floating and sliding calipers are cheaper to build and service and have fewer places where leaks can develop. Next slide, please. So, ang next nga type is the fixed caliper design. So, kani nga design kay na siya one or more pistons gihapon mounted on each side of the rotor. So, the caliper doesn't budge. As you can see, full caliper. Its brakes are applied, only the caliper pistons move, pressing the brake pads against the disc. Fixed calipers are relatively large and heavy, which enables them to absorb and dissipate great amounts of heat. This allows the brake rotor and pads to run cooler and reduce the amount of heat transferred to the brake fluid. Next, please. So, kani sa video is an example of a floating caliper for mas detailed jud siya and mas kasabot.
Let's take a look at the components found in a typical disc brake system. We have the assembly, the wheel, and the wheel nuts. The wheel hub assembly attaches to the chassis of the vehicle and holds the brake disc and wheel. A bearing inside the wheel hub assembly allows the wheel and brake disc to rotate smoothly. This vented brake disc consists of two round metal plates, inside which there is a metal venting system. Brake pads squeeze against the disc to create friction, slowing the wheel. Friction creates high levels of heat, but the venting system reduces this heat by helping to circulate air, cooling the disc. The brake caliper assembly provides a mechanism for squeezing the brakes against the brake disc. It typically comprises of a caliper body, carrier, and brake pads. First, let's look at the caliper body. When the brake pedal is pressed, pressurized hydraulic fluid pushes out the piston. When the brake pedal is released, the piston reverts back to its original position. Externally, an outer seal and dust boot protects the piston from dust and contamination. Next, we have the carrier, which is a cast metal frame mounted to the vehicle. It holds the brake pads and caliper body. Two slider pins allow the caliper body to slide back and forth as the piston moves. Brake pads squeeze against the brake disc and produce the friction required to slow the vehicle. At the back of the brake pad there is a shim, which is designed to reduce vibration and noise. Next, we have the steel backplate, which provides the rigid base for the friction material and solid mounting to the caliper piston and carrier. An underlayer, sandwiched between the backplate and friction material, bonds the two together and acts as a thermal barrier to stop heat being transferred from the pad to the caliper. Finally, we have the friction material, which is made from a variety of compounds designed to offer a combination of stopping power, longevity, strength, and comfort. The brake pads are often held in place by springs, pins, or in our case, a clip. These accessories should always be replaced when brake pads are changed. Now, let's see how these components all work together. The brake pedal is pressed and pressurized hydraulic fluid enters the caliper body. Hydraulic pressure pushes the piston out, first forcing the inner brake pad against the inside of the brake disc. As this happens, the inner piston seal deforms. Now, the inner brake pad cannot travel any further. So, hydraulic pressure forces the caliper body back the outside of the brake disc. When the brake pedal is released, the inner piston seal reverts to its original position, withdrawing the piston.
So, nakita nyo to ninyo.
Again from above. Pressurized hydraulic fluid enters the caliper body. The piston pushes the inner brake pad against the brake disc. When the inner brake pad reaches the extent of its travel, the outer brake pad is then pulled against the brake disc, slowing the wheel. And that's the of a typical
Sige, next. So, nakitaan to ninyo kato, kabantay mo, vented po di ang rotor gigamit. And then, nasakitan ninyo, di ba, ang floating na cylinder, ang cylinder, ay ang caliper, floating caliper rather, ang caliper niya, ni-move jud, o i-compare niyo sa fix, ang piston rin mo move niya, fix ra ang caliper. So, masabot naman siya daan sa iyang name pa lang. And then, so, karon mag-discuss ta sa advantages and disadvantages of disc brakes compared sa drum brakes. So, although increased federal brake performance standards hastened the switch to disc brakes, the front drum brakes would eventually have been eliminated anyway because disc brakes are superior in almost every aspect. So, in terms of efficiency, mas grabe yung shot stopping power. Disc brakes apply more braking force faster, resulting in shorter stopping distances. And then, when it comes to heat management, they are exposed to air. Disc brakes cool better. Drum brakes component so they take more time to cool down after braking. This can cause the brake fade, a loss of stopping power when friction material overheats. Then, when it comes to wet performance, then disc brakes perform better in wet conditions because they are open to the air and canceling water off easily. Plus, the rotors get dried by the pads dragging across them. So when water gets inside the drum brake, it tends to get trapped inside the drum, so it takes longer for the friction material to dry out. Then when it comes to weight discs are lighter than drum brakes designed to apply the same force. And then mas di ba mas lighter, mas better. And then emergency brake, a vehicle's emergency brake is usually applied to the rear axle. This feature is easier to install on a drum brake than to a caliper inside the hub of a disc brake rotor. Mo po ni disadvantage jud sa disc brake. And then when it comes to cleaning, these brakes are self-cleaning. The brake pads wipe the rotor off when they are engaged. Drum brakes are closed and are prone to brake dust collecting from the shoes. So they need periodic cleaning. Makano ba? And then drum brakes have more hardware and can be more complex to service. But drum brake shoes and wheel cylinders typically cost less to replace than disc brake pads and calipers. So mas mahal jud pod ang disc brake pero mas grabe siyang advantages. Then when it comes to maintenance na pod, since a lot of heat is generated by the braking system, plenty can go wrong. So the act of braking converts kinetic or ang moving energy of the vehicle into thermal energy, subjecting many parts to very high temperatures. This means a lot of wear and tear even in normal conditions. Some brake components will need to be replaced over the life of a vehicle. Then when it comes to friction material pod, these brake pads slow the rotor through friction and they wear with normal use. Eventually, they become too thin to function properly. Same thing for drum brake shoes. Ang sa drum brake shoes po, no thin na po siya. The friction material on the shoe gets worn out and braking is compromised. So, mo pa ni ang kapila nga gigamaalin para mas mo progress ta and then mas ma fix ni nga issue. And then, next slide please. So, ang major takeaway jud ani kay disc and drum brakes are built differently with somewhat different advantages. Your vehicle may have both or just disc brakes. Both work as part of the hydraulic brake system. So, the most notable fact about these advantages of disc brakes is that there are so few. The weaknesses of disc brakes include the following. So, number one, the disc brake's lack of self-energizing or servo action is a Mari hapon na, Lore. Thank you. It's a disadvantage for two reasons. First, it contributes to poor parking brake performance. So, since wala man siya servo action, wala maglisod jud po siya when it comes to parking. And then, it's easier to control the brakes for exact amount of stopping power desired. And then, another jud po kay ang brake noise. Probably the biggest complaint about this brake is that they sometimes make various squeaks and squeals during a brake application. So, as long as the linings are not worn down to the backing plate, these noises are usually caused by high frequency rattling or vibration of the brake pads. So, now several methods that are used to quiet noisy disc brakes. Kasagaran ganing manufacturers ron use specific lining materials that dampen the vibrations, and most calipers have anti-rattle clips or springs that hold the pads in the caliper under tension to help prevent the vibration. And then another po nga disadvantage niya kay ang brake dust. Because the lining is exposed on a disc brake rather than being enclosed as on the drum brake, some brake dust can accumulate on the wheels. This brake dust is often dark brown or black and can stain wheels if not cleaned often or protected from the dust. So, di ba kay na disc brake kay sa gawas man iyaha. Muna po, mas easier siya i-maintain kay mas dali po siya hinluan pero mas dali lagi po siya mahugaw. In compare sa drum brake, di siya kay dali mahugaw pero lisod siya hinluan. And then another disadvantage for sa disc brake is poor parking brake performance. Palikon dyan ni siya mo defeat a disadvantage of brake. So the lack of energizing sensor plays a large parking band brake performance. So the lining is the line of a drum brake. So they lower static coefficient of friction and therefore less holding power when the vehicle is stopped. So question, next slide please. Thank you. So question na to. Diba kay efficient makaha ang disc brake when provide siya better stopping power, mo dissipate pa siya sa heat easier and work better in wet conditions. So ngano po if ang disc man kay sa front and then drum man sa rear? Ano di man po pwede nga ang disc sa both nga wheels. So it's due to weight factors, di ba kay lagi nindot ang disc kay gaan siya, so a typical unloaded vehicle is already about 10% heavier sa in front due to the engine. Then when you hit the brakes, the weight of the car transfers to the front, more braking power is needed there, so making it a job for disc brakes. So good jud ang disc brakes sa front. So pero ang drum brakes have some major design flaws. Typically take longer and heavier than disc brakes. So drum brakes are di siya kaayo nindot sa front. Pero at the same time, disc brakes dili siya ka pwede sa parking brake because they expand when hot and contract when cold. So if we relied on them for a parking brake after using them, they would eventually cool off, shrink, and lose contact with the brake disc. Obviously, we'd have a problem here. Okay? If the two brakes are just different, the two, I'm sure, if ang drum brake kay para dyan siya pang parking. And then if wala kay drum brake, mas maglisod ang disc brake o pa-stop sa imuhang kuan when it comes to parking time. And then if mag-stay lang dyan ang car. So the two brakes are just different. So these brakes are more effective and more reliable choice, but they have their limitations. Drum brakes are not very practical, but they're crucial to parking a car. Unless of course, ganahan mo atong balik ta sa mga old era nga magbutang tag stone sa atubangan sa wheel or diba blocks. So mo dyan ay advantage jud pod ngono nindot nga naay drum brakes sa rear and then disc brakes sa front. So again, para when it comes to safety, para paliko na po nito, para safety, i-check jud regularly ang inyong mga components. Di man po ganahan no nga maghuwata nga ang pads, ang shoe, may wear down na sa metal, and then mawa na noon ang iyahang friction power. So there are different approaches to brake service. Get informed about why it's important to maintain more than just the brake pads or drum brake shoes. It's important to get regular brake inspections to keep everything in proper working condition. So refer na lang mo sa car manual or diba dito na sa mga repairman, and hopefully kita pohon if was certified na dyan ta, professional na ta, kita'y makaayos sa atong cars. So ani na end ang report, and then itiwas ni Loren ang power assist. Thank you.
Good morning, classmates. Good morning, sir. So, my topic is about power assist. So, unsa man ang power assist? So, power assisted brakes are also referred to by some as power brakes. So, power assisted brakes are designed to use the power of the engine and or battery to increase braking power. Power assisted brakes can use hydraulic, vacuum, air pressure, or gearbox drive assistance to reduce the driver's pedal effort. So, unsa man yung power assisted brake? So, not literal nga power assisted nga mo supply siya og more power. So, ang power assisted, ang pasabot ana, ang force nga gi-exert sa driver nga gitod niya sa brake pedal, di na siya kinahanglan nga mo exert og more effort kay kining mga power assisted brake. So, kining power assisted na siya mga booster nga gamiton para makatabang siya nga dili na dako di para sa una nga kusog kita mo brake. So mo ni ang tabang sa power assisted brakes. So kini power assisted brakes nag-differ ay different kinds of power assisted brakes. So kini sila nag-differ ni sila gamit ang brake booster. So unsa man yung brake booster? So brake booster is a brake safety component that is coupled at intermediate position between brake pedal and brake master cylinder and works as force multiplication component that uses engine vacuum to multiply the force applied by the driver on the brake pedal before further sending it to the master cylinder, which in turn provide effective braking as well as driver's comfort in applying brakes. So, mo ni common nga kuan kanang mo ani nga part mo na ang brake booster. So mo man ni atong mga master cylinder. So kapila naman nag-discuss nila before ay katunaon nga ni report. So mo ni ang mga brake pedal. So ang booster ani is naa na siya ani. So mo jud siya common nga forma. So halos tanan pareha na magporma. Ang nag-differ lang nila kay ang component nga ilang gigamit. So arita sa sunod. So ang kinds of power boosters. So mo ni ang kinds of power boosters. So ang first nga sa daghan makayo nga kanang kuan go gi-invent nga power assisted. So ang power assisted brakes. So nagan ito air assisted pero wa siya na consider kay dili daw siya relevant sa power assisted. So ang first na consider is in year 1940, so which is the hydrovac brake. So from the word hydrovac brake, so it is the combination of hydro and vacuum. So a type of braking system using spark plug as related to the piston position in the engine vacuum to assist in brake operation. The vacuum action cylinder reduces the effort required from the driver to operate the vehicle brakes. The booster units are single diaphragm vacuum operated and are made up of three functional components which are power section, hydraulic slave cylinder, and vacuum control valve. So sa namantayan ninyo na ang hydraulic ug ang vacuum. So kining hydrovac brakes mo ni ang brakes nga gigamit before pa. So kasagaran na ni katong mga years sa mga military, katong mga 1940s, katong mga war. So mo ni ang gipanggamit sa mga military nga mga sakyanan. Pero karon gigamit ka po ning hydrovac brakes. Gigamit siya kung i-search niyo sa YouTube, gigamit siya sa Chevrolet. So kasagaran sa Chevrolet nga mga sakyanan ang gipanggamit nila nga brake kay hydrovac. So mo ni ang parts ni hydrovac. So mo ni ang parts ni hydrovac. So di na ta mag-discuss kay kapila naman nila gi-discuss. The same naman gihapon na kay di ba sa gingon ni Simon, the same na gyapon ang principle sa brakes, di gyapon na mautro. Ang kalahian na sa power boosters kay ang component nga ilang gigamit. So mo ni ang parts. So mo ni ang karaan jud nga hydro booster. So mo ni ang hydro booster. Hydrovac. So nako ipakita nga video. So sa kadaan na niya, so mo ni ang documentary sa military. So kung gusto niyo mo tan-aw, so mo ni ang documentary nila.
When the brakes are applied, air rushes through the atmospheric valve and into the power cylinder, known as the air cleaner. Part of the air has pushed against the first piston, and part of it, going through the center, has acted on the second piston. This gives an upward diameter. In this system, the brake pedal is connected directly to the master cylinder. When the pedal is pushed down, the pressure of the foot moves the brake fluid forward and starts to
This ay ang ning hydrovac is combination niya ang hydro ang liquid na mismo ay ni continue. So kaning hydrovac is magamit ka po ni siya ron sa mga dagkong truck. So mo ni siya ang kasagaran gamiton sa mga dagkong truck. So the next booster is the hydro boost or the hydraulic. So hydro boost from the word hydro, so means liquid, so fluid. So hydro boost brake boosters use the pressure of the power steering pump to power the brake booster. These systems can be mysterious to the unknown in the 1970s. So 1970s hydraulic. Boost and back booster. Second, the units compact enough to fit spaces. And lastly, they aid diesel engine. So I nyo say nanong difference between sa hydraulic. So mo ni ang parts ni hydro boost brake schematic. So dinata ma-discuss ani kay the same mora maghapon na components ang gigamit ani. So gi-discuss naman nila ganiha. So dinata mag-discuss ang more overview lang at pina 3D. So naa nang liquid. So prior to sa video. So sa video, so sa nabantayan ninyo, kung i-press na to ng i-press na to ng liquid, di ba, dili siya makompress. So sa gingon ni Eli ata man sir to, nga dili makompress ang kuhan. Unlike sa gas, nga kung i-push mo na, di ba, makompress ang air. So, kung tanaw na to, kung mo na gigamit nila sa hydraulic. So the same nagyapon nga to nga gigamit nila sa paggamit nila sa hydraulic nga booster. So kung mo push ang pedal, so ma-push ang liquid. So i-push ang liquid, mo push pud ang liquid sa mga kuan, sa mga connecting nga padong sa wheel. So mo na nga ma-brake ang wheel. So, di-discuss naman to nila ganiha ang yun sa pag-brake sa wheel gamit ang hydraulic. So, tanaw lang nga. So, tanawa kung mo brake ang tao, so ang liquid musaka kay ang pressure niya kay gitod na siya. So, igsaka niya, so mo dagan dayon ang tubig. So, ang fluid, so mudong siya sa brakes kay di ba ganiha gipakita nga every time nga mo push ka, so ang proportional man sila. So, di ba sa gingon pod ni Ellie nga bisan pag regardless sa shape sa regardless pa sa shape sa object, kung mo push o kung i-push yun mo ang fluid mo flow yun na siya kay dili man siya compressible. So wala siya ang kuan. So tanawan na to unsa, so mo ni ang murag kanang the same ra siya to, tanawan na to nga kung kining upat mo ni siya ang mga padung sa wheel. So kini gikan na siya sa brake pad. So mo ni siya ang murag experiment chuchu niya. So mo na siya the same ra gyapon nga to. So itod mo sa brake pad, so matud ang fluid. So sa upat ka buok nga kuan paingon sa wheels, so modong na siya ang fluid, so ma-brake ang wheels. So ang next, so vacuum booster. So sa vacuum booster is a brake servo device in the brake system of light and passenger cars. It uses the vacuum generated by the gasoline engine to work, or the vacuum generated by the vacuum pump installed in the diesel engine to amplify the brake pedal force by a certain proportion to promote the master cylinder. The piston causes the brake master cylinder to generate hydraulically pressure, which causes the wheel brakes to generate resistance, thereby controlling a kind of brake booster used to assist the brakes. The brake booster is a brake booster widely used from light cars to medium cars. It can be roughly divided into vacuum booster, hydraulic booster, and pneumatic booster. So kini vacuum booster, so mao dyan siya ang kinagamitan sa tanang booster. So kasagaran sa kinan ang gigamit nila is vacuum booster. So mo ni siya ang parts. So di na tayo discuss kay di same ra man gihapon. So bisang gilahian ang gigamit ng nila is ang gigamit niya. So
vacuum brake boosters are part of many vehicles. A vacuum brake booster usually consists of the following components. At the rear of the brake booster casing, a vacuum connection is located. First foot to the vacuum brake booster. A diaphragm separates two chambers from each other. Usually, it's a rolling diaphragm with a diaphragm plate. In this animation, however, it's a very flexible diaphragm. A dust boot is used to protect against dirt. The control housing contains an air filter and two springs. In addition, the control housing contains a poppet valve, a valve piston, and a rubber reaction disc. Atmospheric pressure is shown here in blue. Since the dust boot is perforated and the air filter is air permeable, this atmospheric pressure is present in the front part of the control housing. The vacuum connection supplies the vacuum chamber with vacuum. Since the vacuum chamber is connected to the pressure chamber via channel, vacuum is present in the pressure chamber. The vacuum is provided either by an engine or by a pump, as in the case of diesel engines. As soon as the driver depresses the brake pedal, the poppet valve separates the chambers from each other. The valve piston then presses on the rubber reaction disc that is between the front part of the control housing and the pressure chamber is established. This creates atmospheric pressure in the pressure chamber. The pressure difference between the two chambers increases the braking force until the driver does not move the brake pedal further forward. Finally, the poppet valve disconnects the front part of the control housing from the pressure chamber. During full braking, the connection between the front part of the control housing and the pressure chamber is permanently kept open. pressure is constantly exerted on the rubber reaction disc. The atmospheric pressure exerts its full force on the diaphragm.
So, napailain nga hay ka ng power booster. So, na electro power booster pero i-discuss man to niya ni Patrick. So, ani na lang ta sa electrohydraulic. So, electrohydraulic brake system are the combination of electronics and hydraulic to create a more versatile brake system. The electronics provide control the flexibility while the hydraulics supply the power. Electrohydraulic braking offers many advantages over traditional hydraulic braking systems. These advantages can be exploited to provide improved system performance and greater comfort for the operator. Valves can be moved away from the cab and closer to the brakes, reducing plumbing costs. Remote operations are easily handled without having to duplicate with the valving. Vehicle controls can be improved by implementing a variety of control schemes such as electrohydraulic brake systems, anti-lock brake system, which is the ABS. So, i-discuss rin po na niya. And traction control systems, so i-discuss po na niya ng traction control systems. So, these systems are a result of hydraulics and electronics combining to create. The electrohydraulic brake system is, ini siya may, sa tanang brake system kay mo, ini siya ang kina-advancean ata. So, wala siya ang kasagaran nagamit ani kay dili pa man siya, di pa ni siya typical nga gipanggamit karon kay kasagaran gigamit karon sa mga cars is kanang vacuum. So kani electrohydraulic is para ni siya sa mga more advanced cars. So wala siya ang schematic sa kuan sa electrohydraulic. So ang hydraulic boy nag-produce niya og power. So gigamit so from the word electro, so nag-control siya og na siya gigamit nga pang merge na siya electricity nga gigamit. So mo na siya, so mo ni video.
Sensotronic Brake Control (SBC) is an electrohydraulic brake system developed by Daimler and Bosch. The SBC system was introduced on the R230 SL class, which went on sale in Europe in October 2001. In a hydraulic brake system, the driver applies force by a mechanical link from the pedal to the master brake cylinder. In turn, the master brake cylinder develops hydraulic pressure in the wheels. In contrast, the electrohydraulic brake SBC provides the brakes with a brake fluid supply from the hydraulic high-pressure reservoir, which is sufficient for several braking events. A piston pump driven by an electric motor supplies a controlled brake fluid pressure between 140 and 160 bar in the gas diaphragm reservoir. When the driver presses the brake pedal, or when ESP intervenes to stabilize the vehicle, the SBC control unit calculates the desired target brake pressures on each individual wheel. Through the use of independent pressure modulators, the system regulates the hydraulic pressure at each wheel. These 4 pressure modulators consist of one inlet and one outlet valve, controlled by electronic output stages. The system employs a travel sensor and a pressure sensor at the pedal to measure the speed and force of the driver's command. The control unit processes this information and generates the control signals for the wheel pressure modulators. Normally, the master brake cylinder is detached from the brake circuit. A pedal travel simulator creates normal pedal feedback. If ESP intervenes, the high-pressure reservoir supplies the pressure quickly and precisely. Wheels without any driver involvement.
So na may mga naman po yung mga sakyanan nga wala sila nang inanglan ay wala sila gamit nga gi-exert sa katao para lang maka-brake sa isa ka sakyanan. So mo na nga kinahanglan jud ta og brake booster kay kung may traffic delikado kayo kay syempre kung ini-brake nimo nya gagmay ra ba ang mga sakyanan na so ay gagmay ra ang space so makabangga-bangga. So brake booster is also considered as a preventive braking measure taken to prevent driver and passengers as it decreases the chances of brake failure. And also it makes the braking more efficient and helps in case of panic braking. So kining kining brake booster so dili so dali maguba imong brake kay ngano dili maka mo exert og more effort. So ang nagtrabaho lang jud ana kay ang mismo ang component. So kung naman gani makinaunsa so pwede raw na nimo mapulihan ng brake booster. So kung kita ay mapanik ka, so kung wala kay brake booster, so usgon pa nimo og kita ay for example na ka sa crossing unya na kay hapit mabangga so gusto ka mo brake ug wa kay brake booster so dili pa jud na ang imong i-brake nimo di pa jud na mao nga distance nga imong gusto di pa jud na ana taman imong brake. So kung wala kay brake booster so mas dili ka brake. So mo nang mas effective nga na brake booster kay gamay tunog nimo mo ang booster na mismo may mo multiply sa imong force para maka-brake siya og dali. So in case of high speed super and hyper car which goes over 250 miles per hour, the use of brake booster becomes very essential as they requires high braking force to stop or decelerate the vehicle at such a high speed. So, mo po na usa ka trabaho sa brake booster. So, kung ang sakyanan nga kanang arang paswasa mo dagan, so kanang can go 250 miles per hour. So, ang brake booster kay kaya na niya nga makatabang sa imo ang pag-brake para lang maka-brake siya og dali bisan pa og regardless sa unsa ka paspason ang imong sakyanan. So in case of heavy vehicle as due to their heavy weight, the brake force or frictional force required to stop or decelerate such vehicles is quite high, which can be fulfilled by the use of brake booster. So kung bugat ang sa gi-discuss na nila ganiha, di ba, kung bugat ang sakyanan so mas lisod i-brake. So mo nang kining kuan is kining brake booster is very flexible so wala siya mapaspas man or mabugat ang sakyanan is makatabang gyapon ning brake booster. So symptoms of power booster malfunctioning, so pwede pod nga kining power booster is dili siya mogana. So first is ang kuan niya is hard brake pedal. So the primary indicator of a bad brake booster is an extremely difficult to push brake pedal. This issue may occur gradually or appear all at once. In addition, the brake pedal will not return to its original position after being pressed. As soon as you notice your brake pedal is hard to engage, contact a professional mechanic to have your brake booster replaced. It is critical that brake booster faults are repaired quickly. The car is not safe to drive with a failed brake booster. So, kung ang pedal is lisod na tumban, so naadyo na siya daot sa power booster. So for example, inigtunog di mo kay di na daw mobalik sa agi ay di na daw mobalik sa original position ang brake pedal. So nanay problema sa power booster. So ang ikaduha is longer stopping distance. Along with the hard brake pedal, you may notice it takes a vehicle longer to actually stop. This is because you are not getting the actual power boost needed to properly stop the vehicle. A longer stopping distance can be hazardous in all types of weather because it can make your car unpredictable. This issue should be looked at by a mechanic as soon as you notice it. So kung ini-brake nimo gani nga kanang ang dapat siya nga distance na ini-brake nimo kay nganira pero nilapas siya, so nagyapon na siya problema sa power booster. So basin ang power booster wala na siya ni gana og tarong kay kung gamay tunog nimo dapat mo multiply na nimo ang force. So kung mugamay na ang kung mutaas ang distance so nigamay na ang function sa power booster. So nanay daot ang power booster. So in katulo is engine stalls when brakes are applied. When the brake booster is failing, it can draw excess vacuum from the engine. This occurs when the diaphragm inside the brake booster fails and allows air to bypass in the seal. The brakes are then pressed, the engine feels like it will stall, and the idle can drop. In addition to the decreased brake performance, a stalling engine can cause serious issues. So vacuum is nakasunod na siya sa kung ang diaphragm katong gipakita ganiya sa vacuum booster kung na-fail na siya so ang air ato di na magkarimao di ba makita man nimo nga na close tong vacuum wala nakasod ang vacuum so ang atmospheric pressure na nakasod so kung magubat tong diaphragm so di na magkarimao ang pressure sa sod so makakausa siya og serious issues. So next is test the booster. So aron makasure ta nga ingana pa ang booster so na yung mga 3 steps to test the booster. Since the most vehicles use a vacuum system, the brake booster can be tested at your home. So kung na may sakyanan so pwede na ito na testingan. So observe the following 3 steps. So number 1, With the engine off, pump the brakes about 5 or 6 times is sufficient. This depletes the stored vacuum. So number 2, turn the engine on while pushing down lightly on the brake pedal. If your brake booster is working normally, the pedal will fall away a little but then become firm. Number 3, if your brake booster is not working correctly, nothing will happen or the brake pedal will push back against your foot once the engine starts. This could be a sign of a brake booster problem or an issue with the vacuum hose. If you notice the brake pedal is difficult to push higher than normal and your vehicle takes longer to stop, have a mechanic inspect it to be safe on the road. If needed, the mechanic will replace your brake booster in a timely manner so you can safely drive your vehicle again. So, talking about sa pag-replace sa booster, so naanda ko yung video pero kay 5 minutes man, so gamay na laman tag time. So, ako na lang i-send link ninyo. So, naroon na siya sa YouTube. So, kamalay tanaw ani. So, let's proceed to the next reporter. So, about electronic brake. I-discuss ninyo Patrick.
Oh. Good morning mga gwapo o gwapa. Discuss ito karon ang electronic brake. Kaning electronic brake is nag-compose gyapon siya og brakes like kanang conventional brakes like disc brakes and drum brakes but with electronic components. Muna gitawag siya og electronic brake. Electronic brake force distribution. Gitawag na siya og electronic brake force distribution or electronic force limitation kay ang brake force pressure niya kanang pag-step sa brake pedal bitaw ni-apply na ta og brake pressure na. Unya sa kanang electronic brake force distribution, ang brake force pressure is gi-distribute sa mga tagsa-tagsa ka wheels. Ang electronic force limitation from the word itself kay ang the amount of brake force nga i-apply sa each vehicle brakes is na limitations. O ang the amount of brake force nga i-apply is nagbase sa road conditions og drive hour, slippery road, speed, high speed or low speed ba, loading which is the number of passengers o daghan ng passengers sumasugkat, and the amount of cargo. Og bugat sa rear wheel, di ba sa likod, rear wheel. So ato increasean sa electronic brake force distribution o brake force pressure para mahunong gyud ang vehicle. And kaning cornering, kanang likoon, nagliko bitaw ang weight sa vehicle is papunta sa outside wheels. So ato kinahanglan og brake force pressure para dili mo slip or mo roll over ang sakyanan. Always coupled with anti-lock braking systems. Ang kaning ABD is kauban na rin sila sa ABS or anti-lock braking system. Kaya ang pinaka-main function sa ABD is to apply more or less brake pressure. Kung asang mas kinahanglan og brake pressure, so ato increasean og brake force to maximize stopping para mahunong gyud ang sakyanan. As well as kaning ABS or anti-lock brake system is para dili mulak ang wheels sa vehicle to maintain vehicular control. Next please. ABD main components. There are three main components sa electronic brake force distribution, kaning wheel speed sensors. Kaning wheel speed sensors, i-detect and monitor niya ang rotational speed sa each wheels na permanent magnet sa sensor dire nga mo acts like a generator niya mo produce ang wheel sensor og analog alternating current. Katong gi-discuss ni Leah ganiya. Din modong ang analog form sa ECU or electronic control unit. Diri sa ECU, i-ignore niya ang voltage value o gamiton niya ang AC frequency. Ang ECU may mo receive sa input signals, di ba? Ikan sa wheel speed sensors. But kaning input signals is in analog form, so dapat niya i-convert into digital format before i-process o gidong sa brake modulators. Then lastly, ang brake modulator ang mo execute o i-increase or decrease ba niya ang brake force pressure anang wheel. Next please. Braking ay basic working schematic. Una ay speed sensor katong ganiya. Ang speed sensor mo detect niya ang speed sensor mo produce og AC frequency, and then sa ECU may mo receive sa analog form. Ang ECU i-convert niya ang analog form to digital format. Then sugo niya ang brake modulator para i-execute o i-increase ba niya or decrease ang brake force pressure nga kailangan. Next please. So before na to i-discuss kung kano sa i-increase or decrease ang brake force pressure nga kailangan sa wheels, isabton sa nato gamay ang basic principle sa anti-lock brake system. By the way, i-elaborate mo ni siya sa traction and electronic control stability sa next reporters. Ikaning anti-lock brake system is relevant sa ang topic about vehicle stability. Anti-lock brake system or ABS. There is anti-lock brake system. Imagine you are trying to brake out but the wheels is locked up. Ug mukalit ra brake, nya kusog kayong padagan sa sakyanan, so dili gyud ta maka-ensure nga inig brake is mohunong dayon kay tungod sa loading and weight of the wheels. Naginay deceleration rates. Kaning deceleration rate, for example, sa road conditions of dry bar or slippery road. Sa slippery road or slide ang road, ang deceleration rate is gamay kay tungod sa surface dili kay mo grip ang tire sa road tungod kay basa. While sa dry surface is dako or kusog ang deceleration rate. Dali ra siya mahunong kay kusog sad mo grip ang tire sa road tungod kay uga. Di ba ang system sa electronic brake force distribution is to monitor wheel speeds at all times and control brake pressure. So ang main function sad sa ABS or anti-lock brake system is i-prevent niya nga dili ma-fully lock ang wheels sa vehicle. Kaya dili fully lock ang wheels sa vehicles is natay control sa steering wheel, di ba? So pwede tayo makaliko while braking and to invade obstacles ahead. Next please. Dala, ABS components. Kanang ABS components parehar gini sila sa ABD components kay partner sila sa electronic brake. So pareha sa gyapon kay most of the modern vehicles, di ba? Ug nay electronic brake force distribution is naka-install sad og ABS. Mura gyapon ang ABS electronic control unit ECU may mo receive ug mo process sa signals from the wheel speed sensors. Next please. How anti-lock brake system works.
ABS helps the tires maintain better grip on the pavement during difficult stops. And tires with better grip not only stop more effectively, they steer better too. ABS can help drivers maintain steering control while helping make the best use of braking power and tire traction. And that helps enhance safety and security. By keeping all four wheels turning, even as the vehicle decelerates, the tires maintain better grip on the road. A skidding tire has less braking and cornering capability than a rolling tire. In fact, a skidding front tire can generate very little cornering force, so ABS helps improve a driver's ability to stop and steer at the same time.
Main purpose of electronic brake. Ang electronic brake is plays a similar role to other brake-related technology like EBD, ABS, as well as the traction control and electronic stability control nga IDEX and X reporters. All these technologies are designed to perform main goals, to prevent the wheels of a vehicle from locking up, to prevent the vehicle from oversteering and understeering, to effectively reduce the stopping distance of a vehicle. Next, please. Okay, when would be useful ang ABS and ABS be useful? Katong main purpose, kinahanglan ng wheels sa vehicle is dili mo lock up. Pag mo lock up ang wheels sa vehicle, so you don't have no control sa steering wheel. Pag lock up ang wheels, nya paspas kayong padagan sa sakinan, so may possibility nga tungod sa kakusog kayo sa dagan sa sakinan, dili na ta ka-invade og obstacles ahead and can endanger you and the lives of others of the road. So kanus man siya kinahanglan ang EBD og ABS. Dire makita na to mga choy og unsa kay importante ang EBD. So kato nabahin ang braking force pressure, nabahin og tarong kay mas kay og ang passenger kay sa front wheel ra, so sa front wheel ra gyud butangan og brake force pressure para mahunong gyud ang sakyanan. Next please. Both front and rear tires have equal braking force, that is 25% of total per tire. There is without electronic brake force distribution. And brake force pressure is normally distributed. It means nga ang four wheels, di ba ang four wheels kay 100% brake force pressure is gibahin. So 25% braking force sa isa ka wheel. Kay normally distributed man og walay electronic brake force distribution. There is with electronic brake force distribution, the front tires have more braking force than rear tires. Mas dako ang braking force, kitay mas bugat sa front wheel. So mas dako ang braking force sa front wheel kay mas dako og bugat ang loading sa front wheel. Next, please. Dire makita na to loaded. O makita dire ang loaded ang vehicle, nay passenger sa likod. So, gidistribute ang braking force ng kailangan para nag-brake is munong dayon. Next, please. Og unloaded, og ang driver ang sakay, therefore, mas dako og braking force ang front wheel.
kay mas bugat man sa tubangan og bugat mas tako og braking force nga kailangan. Next please. Diri sa straight road, ug ang driver steps in the brake pedal during a straight ahead stop, nakusog kay ang dagan sa vehicle, ang weight sa vehicle is matransfer forward to the front wheels. Das dapat dako ang braking force na kailangan sa front wheel. Diri nito may buuan nga ang loading, ang kabugat ug speed sa vehicle is makatrigger sa braking system as well as katong road conditions of cornering bitaw. Next please. Dara, cornering. Ug ang driver steps on the brake pedal bitaw while cornering kanang likoon, ang weight sa vehicle is mabalhin sa outside wheels kay nigliko, ang weight sa sakyanan is madung sa outside wheels tungod sa momentum and mugamay ang braking grip sa less vehicle weight kay gihatag sa electronic brake force distribution sa outside wheels kay adto man ang mas kinahanglan og braking force. Next please. Benefits of electronic braking systems: easier maintenance. Using electrical braking is dili siya expensive good maintenance cost. Dili siya expensive og maintenance cost ikumpara sa mechanical braking. Kay ang traditional braking is periodically or from time to time replace ang brake shoes and this involve extra cost. Improve brake wear, increase braking effort, reduce running costs, improve vehicle safety, and increase system capacity. Next please. Gare, discuss naman eh. Nga kinahanglan kayo ang electronic brake force distribution para mabahin yun ang braking force nga kailangan sa wheel ug asa ang mas bugat or depende sa road conditions. Next please. How electronic brake force distribution works.
Electronic brake force distribution, or EBD, reduces brake pressure at lightly loaded wheels that are more prone to skid. EBD can help provide optimal brake proportioning to each individual wheel based on driving conditions such as the number of passengers, amount of cargo, deceleration rates, and when cornering. When a driver steps on the brake pedal during a straight-ahead stop, the vehicle's weight transfers forward to the front wheels. When a driver steps on the brake pedal while cornering, the vehicle's weight transfers to the outside wheels. In both cases, momentum shifts weight and reduces the braking grip on the specific set of wheels with less vehicle weight. ABS wheel speed sensors are designed to detect this wheel speed difference before it turns into a full-fledged skid and begin to reduce pressure to the less loaded wheels. With EBD, the brakes can be modulated more precisely to keep brake force at wheels with the most traction and maintain vehicle stability.
Conclusion. ABS, present modern cars provide better safety when driving. Road safety is very important to everyone. To drivers, passengers, motorists, and pedestrians, it helps better braking on poor road conditions as safe as possible. But this does not mean that it's completely safe. There are still many dangers associated with driving in bad weather conditions, including low visibility and less overall traction. Whether or not electronic brake helps, it also depends on how quickly you react to a potential hazard and how safely you can steer to avoid it. Electronic brake has an active car safety feature that helps cars make use of traction effectively, which is the next topic, itong traction stability nga report sa next rapper, Lovette Mumar. So, thank you, Murato.
Good morning. My topic is about traction control system. Since magbalik-balik na yung traction word sa ang report, what do we mean by traction? In layman's term, the grip of a tire on a road. Traction control system, TCS, is an option that is often found on vehicles equipped with anti-lock brake system. So, ana ra na traction control system ang vehicle kung naa siya anti-lock brake system. Ang difference sa dua is, ano ra ma-apply ang anti-lock brake system kung mag-brake ka sa imong vehicle. Ang traction control system is inag-start nimo para dili mo slide nagpadagan. Traction control is essentially an add-on feature to anti-lock brake system that improves traction when the vehicle is accelerating on a wet or slick surface or is accelerating too quickly for the tires to maintain their grip. Kaning traction control system is a safety feature ni sa anti-lock brake system, especially kung nagpadagan ka sa basa nga road or paspas ka nagpa-accelerate sa imong vehicle para dili mo kamas ang ligid bitaw ay nagpadagan. Traction control prevents wheel spin by applying the brakes on the drive wheel that is losing traction or momentarily reducing engine torque by various methods. Ma-explain na rin siya as we go along. So the components. Control module has additional software and control circuits for traction control system. So anong control module nga nasa ito nga na diya ang software of mga circuits sa system. Next is wheels. Wheel sensors are used to monitor wheel speeds. Ang wheel sensor may mag-monitor sa wheel if nabay nag-lose traction sa road or wala. Modulator unit is used to control braking. Or anti-lock brake system modular unit, mao'y mag-control kung asa sa upat ka brake ang kinahanglan mo apply og brake if naay nag-lose traction. How traction control works. The primary input to the traction control system control program comes from the wheel speed sensors. The sensors continually monitor the speed of the wheels anytime the vehicle is moving. So ang wheel sensor may makadetect if naabay nag-lose traction nga ligid. The sensors generate a signal that is proportional to wheel speed. So by comparing wheel speed, the TCS can detect changes that indicate a wheel is losing traction, skidding, or spinning. Since simultaneous ang tuyok sa ligid ay nag-start o padagan, ana ma-determine if nag-lose traction ang ligid kung naabay difference. When traction control is needed, it applies the brakes on the drive wheel or wheels that is losing traction. Slowing the wheel allows it to regain traction. If ma-detect na na-lose traction, automatic na siya nga mo-brake kung asa nga wheel ang nag-lose traction. Mubalik ang traction sa wheel sa road if painayan ang tuyok sa ligid. If both wheels are losing traction, traction control may brake both wheels equally to slow them down enough so that they can regain traction. Or it may also send a request to the powertrain control module to reduce engine torque until traction is regained. For example, aning picture, ang right wheel is nasa sa wet na road. Na-detect sa wheel sensor nga nag-lose traction. Ang ABS modular unit may nag-control na ang right side ng wheel ay kinanglan applyan og brake. If na-brake ang right side ng wheel, ang opposite ng wheel kay ang opposite ng wheel nga napay traction is mokusog yung torque para consistent ang speed sa vehicle. Traction control off switch. Some drivers may find the intervention of traction control annoying, especially if they drive a performance vehicle. So most systems have a button or switch that allows the driver to temporarily deactivate traction control. Na ibang driver nga sumukan sa safety feature, especially kung na supercar. Siyempre, una tayo supercar, ganyan po tayo magpa-chay-chay. Mostly kay na external button para ma-off ang traction control system. Kaning picture sa left side, nga na ang purma. Depende na lang sa unit sa vehicle kung asa dapit nakabutang. When the system is disabled, a warning light will illuminate to remind the driver traction control is not available. The system will remain disabled until the driver pushes the TCS button again or until the start of the next ignition cycle. The default mode for TCS is usually on. Kung i-off nimo ang traction control system, na mo warning sa dashboard na naka-off ang system. Then mo balik ra na og on kung pinuton balik ang button or kung inag-off nimo sa vehicle then i-start nimo vehicle balik kay naka-on na daan since mo na default na mode. Since safety feature ning traction control system sa anti-lock brake system, if i-off ang traction control system, dili ma-off ang anti-lock brake system since always naka-on ning ABS. Unless siguro kung na-defect. Can I brief video about how traction control system works?
During heavy acceleration from a standstill or when merging with traffic, wheels can lose traction, reducing the driver's control of the vehicle. Traction control prevents this wheel slip. So, how does it work? The traction control module monitors data from the wheel speed sensors and the powertrain control module. It samples this data continually, comparing the rotational speed of each wheel. If one or more wheels is rotating faster than the others, indicating traction loss, the system takes action. It instructs the powertrain control module to reduce torque and the braking system to apply braking pressure to the slipping wheel until it regains traction. Traction control allows drivers to safely apply heavy acceleration when merging with fast-moving traffic and on slippery or loose surfaces.
That's all about my report. And the next report rapper is Miss Jane Alaban.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Sir Jeff. Today I will be discussing about control systems. So, wait po pa din ang slide. Okay, so first na itong ako is unsa man ang control system. So a control system is a system of devices or set of devices that manages, commands, directs, or regulates the behavior of other devices or systems to achieve desired results. So murag ma-explain naman siya, masabtan naman siya nga kaning control system mo ni siya mo manage, mo command, mo direct, mo regulate sa behavior sa mga devices or systems para makuha nato ang atong desired nga results. Okay, sunod kay good control system. So naatay pito ka buok nga kailangan nato nga i-consider para maingon nato nga good control system na siya. Okay, we have first kay accuracy. So ang accuracy mo ni siya mo define sa limit sa iyang errors. So naunsa ang slide mura lagi siya ning kuan lagi ang slide sa kuara ni sige patayin lang ko sige. So first kay again accuracy kay mo ni siya mo define sa limit sa error niya. So kana syempre the more siya nga accurate, the more the less iyang error. Third is sensitivity. So mo ni siya dapat nga insensitive enough siya on some kanang parameters or part, pero kanang dapat pud siya sensitive enough para mo input og signal, mga signals. Sunod is noise. So of course kanang mo ni siya mga undesired nga mga input signals. So mo ni siya kanang matawag mo nga good imong control system kung able siya to reduce the noise effect. Okay, kaupat ka stability. So, syempre, kay stable man, so whatever imong gi-input, dapat mao po imong gawas. So, if bounded imong input signal, dapat po bounded imong output. And then, kung imong input kay 0, di dapat po kanang 0 po imong output. Next, kay we have bandwidth. So, unsa man ni siya? Dapat ko na ang bandwidth mo should be as large as possible for the frequency response of a good control system. So, mas maayo yung frequency response kung mas dako imong bandwidth. Ikalima, we have speed. So, syempre, kung kanang ang mag-talk siya about time taken, no? So, kung paspas na itong ma-achieve ang ato ang output, the efficient ang imuhang control system. So, good siya ang control system. Ang last kay oscillation, so which mean indicate the same rin siya stability, no? Ma-indicate siya sa system kung stable siya kung minute imong oscillation. Okay, so kanang sumote pito ka buok nga mo indicate kung good ba mong control system. So natay duha ka type of control system. First is open loop. So ang open loop kay muna siya control actions are independent of the desired output, meaning that the output is not measured or fed back to the input for comparison. So to make it simple, kanang naay murag one way siya nga process. So mohatag kag input sa controller, mo process siya then ay output. So kanang para mas masabtan pag yun siya na for example kaning natay bread toaster no, so kanang bread toaster kanang muhatag ka kaning nga machine kimoran siya og tested time. For example muhatag ka og kanang imuhang ibutang yung bread adto unya dili na siya kanang imong butang imong time, then after may butang ang imuhang time nga magluto siya kanang regardless if naluto ba ay na-toast ba jud ang bread or dili, mo stop jud ang system. Inig ka mahuman ang time nga imong gi-adjust ana. So unlike sa closed system, sige sa sunod nga type which is closed system. So ang closed system kay kanang the control action from the controller is entirely dependent on the desired output. It is fed back through the input to control the action of the desired output. So, mura siya og cycle. After nimo ibutang imong input sa controller, mag-process siya, then ay output, unja muhatag siya kanang feedback balik sa input. So, meaning, magdepende ang imuhang system sa unsa kalabasan sa output. So ibang nato kanat lang una-naon kintahay nga naa kintahay dryer kanang ping dry bitaw sa sanina nga dili siya mo stop ang system unless nga nahibawan niya or na sense niya nga na dry na jud tanang sanina. So ingana ang difference ni open o ni close. So si open usar siya ka straight nga process while dili mo hatag og feedback ang output balik sa input, unlike sa closed loop nga mobalik ang mohatag feedback ang output sa input. Okay, next kay kana natay mga other kani examples sa pud siya sa kuan dili nato na siya kay dig deeper kay kanang masabtan naman siguro pud ang difference ni closed ug ni open no. So natay another classifications of control systems. So aside from open o closed loop, na po tayo gitawag nga regulator o servo mechanism. So mo ni siya yung duha ka classifications nga according sa objective. Regulator mo ni siya kanang constant value at all times in the presence of the disturbance. So ang ato na i-discuss this song ko. So, a car requires suspension, steering, and brakes for everyday driving tasks. So, kaning suspension, steering, o brakes, muna siya collectively known as chassis. So, muna siya, ang chassis control system, muna siya ang kanang maka-improve og safety reliability sa imuhang vehicle. Okay, so kaning chassis control systems na siya lima ka classification, which is first kay brake control system. So ang brake control system naapod siya tulo ka under niya, which is number 1 anti-lock brake system. So dili na ako ni siya kayo i-dig deeper no kay na-discuss na ni siya sa tong kanang previous reporter. Next kay traction control system, which is also discussed na pod sa ato ang previous nga reporter, so di na po na ako na i-dig deeper. So ang sunod kay ang electric stability control system. So kaning electric stability control system mo ni siya kanang the system reacts in milliseconds when it determines the vehicle isn't going in the same direction as the steering input. So in other words, a skid and immediately taken action to straighten everything out. So sa picture makita nato no nga kanang kung mo ni siya mo react siya dayon, mo take siya action na para ma-straighten up ang sakyanan kung mo go siya kanang on a different direction than sa imong input nga kanang steering. So kanang sa uban nga countries no, like for example Canada, kanang mo ni siya usa sa mga requirements sa mga bag-o nga tractor trailers tungod kay kanang sa Canada di ba kay mag-snowman so slide gid ang karsada nila so mo ni nga maka-add siya og kanang safe nga paggamit sa sakyanan kung naay ingani nga function or control system. Okay, next kay ato ta sa ikaduha nga control system which is steering control system. So naputay tulo ka book under ani. Pero kaning power steering is a system so ako sa explain gamay ang power steering. Mo ni siya mo reduce sa effort required sa driver nga i-turn ang wheel. Okay, so first kay ang hydraulic power steering. So kana I believe nga gi-discuss na ni sa mga niagi nga mga reporters no pero kadto sila isa brake system to kani kay sa power assist ni siya. So first kay ang hydraulic power steering kay hydraulic fluid that mo ni siya magamit og hydraulic fluid nga kanang gikan sa nga pressurized nga gipump o driven off gikan sa engine. So dili kay siya efficient kay daghan kay ma-waste nga energy kay bisan pag straight og dagan ang vehicle mosigig gihapon og padayon og pump ang kaninga kanang power steering. Next kay na ay gitawag nga electric power steering. So ang electric power steering kanang ang kalahian nila ni hydraulic kay kani magamit ni siya electric motor that draws energy from the vehicle's electrical system to provide the steering assistance. So mo ni ang magamit siya electric motor para makahatag siya og steering assistance. So this difference sa hydraulic ang hydraulic ay magamit man og pressurized nga hydraulic fluid gikan tud sa gi-driven off sa engine kani magamit og electric motor. So naapoy mix sa duha which is electro-hydraulic steering or mo ni siya murag hybrid nila. Ang pamaagi ani is the same rin siya sa hydraulic assist system pero ang difference na nila is nagamit na siya og electric motor. So instead nga magamit sa kanang rather than driving the pump of the engine. Okay, next we have sunod nga control system sa chases is suspension control system. So adaptive suspension. So kani siya nga system mo ni siya mo detect og bumps on the road and movements of the vehicle and the controller that controls the damper on each wheel. So mo ni siya makadetect siya kung kanang sa mga bumps sa ato nga agian sa atong sakyanan. Okay, next kay kanang dito na tanong na ay kaduha ay kana dili kaduha ka upat is supervision control system. So kaning supervision control system so moanam og advance ang ato ang technology, moanam pud og advance itong sakyanan, so moanam siya ka kanang complicated og mga commands. Mo na nga ang supervision control system is useful kayo siya kay mo ni siya mo interpret mo sa interpret sa driver commands ang controls of interaction between sa powertrain components through their individual control modules. So mo ni siya tulo ka buok ang primary software kay mo read, mo control ug mo write. So mo ni siya kaning this structure or kaning gitawag nga supervision control system mo ni siya mo provide og intuitive layout nga mo simplify sa code expansion sa whole system sa command system sa sakyanan. Okay, last but not the least nga control system is kanang next kay ang kanang assistance control system. So napo siya tulo ka klase. First is ang lane assist. So unsa man lane assist? So lane keeping and lane departure systems are forward facing cameras to monitor the lane lines around your vehicle and will provide visual, audible and other tactile warnings. So kanang masabot ra man siya no, so mo detect na ay mga sensors nga nag-surround sa kanang mga nagpalibot niya para makatag siya og warning nga aning lakas ba or wala sa line. Sunod kay park assist. So ang park assist kay mo ni siya automated parking aid that helps driver park. So kanang masabot ra man no nga kanang ang park assist kay mo ni siya mo katabang sa mga driver inig park nila with precision. Okay, last kay adaptive cruise control. So mo ni siya mutabang help vehicles maintain a safe following distance and stay within the speed limit. So masabot ra pud siya nga muni siya mutabang sa kanang mga vehicle nga makakuan siya sa maka-keep siya distance from lain nga mga sakyanan nga nagpalibot nila. For example, nasa karsada, kanang maka-keep siya distance from na siya atubangan nga sakyanan or nasa siyang likod. Then, maka-stay po siya within a speed limit. So, maurot o tanan nga ako ang discuss about control systems. Thank you. Ay, napare-reduce na.
Dynamics, steering can be empowered by virtual processes. Besides supporting common solutions and developments in the strategy, additional benefits can be optimizing systems, active suspension or ABL-VSM prediction of the location braking and traction capabilities. This example shows three different AAWD topologies performing a most formal acceleration maneuver. Furthermore, the lateral behavior of the vehicle can be virtually tested and optimized. This example shows a comparison between the two torque vectoring on the rear axle. This functionality effectively behavior and enables the vehicle to pass the test properly. Last but not least, enables the virtual testing of vehicles on racetracks like the 𝗕𝗿𝗸𝗸𝗀. Again, the faster vehicle is equipped with a torque vectoring function on the rear axle and benefits constantly in terms of gaining lap time.
Tools for reporting. Thank you very much for listening. And ang standby sa takayot kay ato asang i-screenshot at tanas. Lor, pala yung exit yung presentation, Lor. Salamat.